All right, let's call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. Are there any adjustments to the agenda that people would like? I invited Tracy here because I think he has a lot to contribute to portions of the thing. Any changes to the November minutes?
Well, I would make a motion that we approve the minutes for November.
Second, David seconds, all in favor?
I'm gonna
Any against?
abstain from that since I wasn't at the November meeting.
Right, so we got a
A
majority.
We're good. Minutes are approved. Are there any public comments?
I got, just because it's not on the agenda, just a quick recap. I know you were at our last planning commission meeting, but you didn't stay for the whole meeting. Just wanted to pass along the fact that the planning commission is planning to stick with the lake setback to be in accordance with the Shoreland Protection Act. It was quite a bit of discussion. End of the day, we just felt that was adequate, and there were a number of people that felt if somebody wants to build a deck closer than 100 feet or 75 feet from the shoreline, as long as it meets the state requirements, we're fine with it. So I just wanted to pass that along. We haven't taken action on the other items, but I think they're gonna be pretty straightforward.
I mean, it's a bit disappointing, but if you look at the hoops you have to jump through to do that, so it's not like, hey, I can say I'm gonna put in a deck. You have to prove that it's pervious, you have to get a jurisdictional waiver.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, I think, through the environmental court, so it's not trivial, but it still can happen.
And that's not the end of the story. Obviously, we'll have a public hearing. It'll go to the select board. They'll have a public hearing. So there's still plenty of opportunity for input that people don't agree with that.
So, I mean, if we wanted to pursue this, so right now, if you had a public hearing, that setback would not be in.
Well, yeah, that's right. We would not be changing our current.
So we would have to lobby.
But whatever. Yeah, I mean, you'd go to the public hearing, you'd make your case known.
Okay.
And then same thing with the select board. You know, I'm not sure where the select board would stand on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure it's worth it. I think it's,
anyway.
but it would have been nice.
Yeah,
It would have helped DEC. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Because that's the one area that
yeah,
they're not comfortable with.
yep. So anyway, that's it.
Okay, good. Thanks, Ian. All right, so David is not here. We have two options for the website, so it's pretty clear.
Hey, Tom,
I
this
got
is David Eric. I'm here.
Oh, there he is. I got it pretty much from Carl. If, Shoreland wants to do a website, we can have a link on the planning commission. I mean, it could be somewhere else, as it was put to DEC, which it's too big for
Right.
anybody to make sense of. And so if we can do a website and it can be external, and Corinne confirmed that there are other entities, if you will, that have a website. But number one, we need to get some money to develop it.
Yeah.
And it's not a big deal to maintain it, but we would have to get some money to maintain it.
So that's really, you said there's two options. That's really the only option, right? In other words, we can't be part of the North Hero website. It has to be a separate website.
Has to
with
be
a
a
link.
link off.
Yeah, okay,
Well, let me say,
I think so.
yeah, correct. As a subcommittee, that is
okay,
correct.
all right. yeah.
Now, so why don't we just have that link go right to the Shoreland Protection Act? For the state,
I mean, we could,
instead of
but,
doing our own website, what's gonna be different about ours?
oh, it's so hard to maneuver, to navigate. You'd go to the Shoreline Protection Act and it's a lot. And to have people go to things that we think are important is very, very difficult.
No, I think we could have a website that would be helpful for people to navigate the system.
Now, with that said, I mean, I have avenues to get, we could submit a proposal. I mean, the one I'm thinking of isn't until October of next year. At this moment, I did not go to Northwest Regional Planning. There's also Watersheds United, which potentially has some money to do this, and there's potentially some other independent grants that we might be able to get money. It's all a whole bunch of mites if we want to
Yeah.
get some money to.
Yeah, I think we
focus.
definitely should pursue that
Yeah.
rather than try to get the select board to approve some money.
I think that's the route
I
to
don't
go.
think I don't think the select board would approve any money.
No, they're,
I'm positive they didn't.
well, you and I sat through
Yeah.
some of the budget discussions the other night, yeah.
Right.
There's not a lot of appetite to increase.
For, no,
No, it's already increased, you know.
It's kind of a rough year.
yeah,
But I do see a second path, and this is maybe a little different. I'm really looking at Joe for this, because you mentioned it a number of times. So if this becomes I'm not sure what the word would be, a permanent committee. Not a subcommittee, but similar to Parks and Rec or the capital improvement. Well, now you kind of get your own area
yeah.
on the town website. And I don't, at this minute, I can't even think of how we get there, but, the project event might lead us in that direction. I'm just saying, if the second path would be to become more of a permanent event, and then I think we have a website. I don't think you can do a lot of development. I've looked at how people are organized. You can put a whole bunch of links. And so we could put a link to the pamphlet. We could put a link to permitting. We could put a whole bunch of links and organize it reasonable, but it wouldn't have a lot of flair.
Yep,
So do you see this committee continuing then? All of you guys?
I mean, especially if you're pulling grants and working with the state to help with the shoreland roads and all.
Unknown caller.
But that's, yeah,
Go ahead.
I know, I know. I guess I figure that's different than what we had originally intended for this
And
committee.
that's what I was just.
So, you know, as far as this subcommittee, I mean, I feel like we beat our heads against the wall, really, with the lack of anything that we're able to do, or, I don't know.
I mean, I'll give you the 3 reasons to keep it. And I mean, one is to continue on with projects. We don't necessarily need a committee to do that, but I think it brings some credibility to the funding agencies and so on and so forth. I'm hoping somebody will look at what I've currently done and say, hey, I'm really interested in helping with that, and I'd really like to take this piece, like permitting. I'm looking at Andy. And that sort of thing. I'm reasonably sure, at least through this first one, Tracy and I can get through it. But there are more potential opportunities. I can list out a whole bunch. The other reason is I do think doing the summer event, I think that should be repeated. But it's basically calling up DEC and saying, hey, we'd like a permitting event, and it took some time, but it didn't. And I think we know the people to contact. We can contact Misha, we can contact Allison. I think we know all the people to contact that we wanna bring to
And
the
that's
table.
the other thing, is it keeps our town informed
Yeah.
as to what's going on. You know, whereas in the past, we'd get what come down from the state, and then we have to try to interpret it. And I think that would be a portion of what this group could do, is help bridge that for the town.
Yeah, I agree with
The
you.
hard part is, there isn't a lot of money for a committee.
We don't
Trying to-
cost anything.
Well, yeah. Trying to think about the sustainability year after year, is it this, what else could we come up with as far as like for training? To make it more of a long term, or without, because I know one of the concerns is interfering with Parks and Rec. And I don't see this as the same as Parks and Rec. I see the education on a whole different level. Whereas Parks and Rec may focus on deer or rabbits or plants or, whatever for their education. We're pretty heavily focused on the lake and lake quality. And I think it could. I think we'd have to rewrite the mission statement. Or write a good, solid mission statement. To make sure that there isn't a lot of fear. But what you've done, I think, is incredible for, you know. With the potential projects that we have here in town and looping the state in and the other agencies in. I mean, it's great. It's great for the town. I mean, it puts us ahead of everybody. And not only that, but it, you know, like you said, it would add credibility if there were grants out there. Because they know we're taking it serious and we want it.
There's my feeling, both from the select board and, comments made, the projects are highly valued by the select board.
Big time.
If we can bring our tax dollars back to North Hero and do some projects that have value, and why not?
Yeah.
Why
I
not?
mean, absolutely.
Um,
We're a small town with you know, a somewhat small revenue. Once we get done paying for the fact that we're a gold town. You know, so anything we can do to help, and that's kind of what I look at with our whole administration. We're all a bunch of pretty much volunteers for the most part. I mean, I do get paid $1,200 a year, so it's a lot.
Wow. 300
Um,
more than I get on the water board.
I don't want to start anything. But you know what I'm saying? And it's like anytime we can bring anything extra that adds value to the town, I mean, out of the island towns, I think we have the most beautiful. And I think it's the most well kept, and I think we have the most mature audience in town.
The other
Just like
towns
that.
have this type of thing, South Hero, Grand Isle have the Shoreline Committee.
As far as I know, none of the,
Alberta.
the Regional Planning Commission used to, and they abandoned it.
Just a little bit of an aside, but to add to what Joe said, of course, we're working with an engineering firm on our water tank project. The president of the company, Wayne Elliott, is retiring at the end of the year. He took some time to get a hold of me the other day and say how much he appreciated working for the town of North Hero, you know, between Corinne and Lisa, those of us on the water board, the select board. He's, for a small town, we really got our act together. He's been very impressed. And he named a few other bigger towns that he's had a lot of issues with.
and that's my thing. My view is, as a small town, I don't want to follow, I want to lead. I want to set the example, and I mean, that's just my personal approach to it. And I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's how I try to take my role on the select board too, is, you know, try to set the example for what we should be doing.
Yep.
And that's how I see this. This is what we should be doing if we live on the lake.
Well, here's what, you know, if you go back to our mission statement, one of our primary objectives is public education, and I think we've made great strides the past year, but I think this website is part of it. You know, I think we should focus on that, see if we can come up with a really good website. If people feel like they can go and get the information they need to, you know, simple matter. And then maybe we reassess it, that, you know, reassess whether we should.
feel
keep going.
Again, you know, just to go back to my point is like, we've had those education pieces and, you know, there have been people in the audience that have been here and said, oh, I didn't know that.
Right.
And then 2 weeks later, I see that same guy that said, I didn't know that, with a backhoe in the lake. I kid you not,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, we're educating ourselves, we're educating. And most people want to do the right
Yeah.
thing, but some people don't care, and that's, I don't know,
Yeah,
so it's
that's-
frustrating for me.
That's always gonna happen.
That's always gonna be. like
All
that.
I know it is, and.
But it feels like we're not making, that portion I'm incredibly frustrated with.
Yeah,
I
I mean, that's kind of why we had started this committee, is to be able to clean things up and clear things up, and I don't feel like we have.
So
The project, yes, that's fine.
I'll bring this up because I had this conversation with the person that wants us to have a diversity and inclusion statement for the town. Town demographics, average age in town is 59 years old. At 59, how pliable is your mind? You know, most people are set in their ways and a lot of people are not open for new ideas. But that's where we have to have the education and help, and people like they're talking
It's
about.
not ideas, it's the law.
Right.
And they're still doing it.
But the problem is the
And if
people
you-
you're talking
and-
about are probably native islanders that have lived on the lakeshore their whole life. They've seen their father, their grandfather, and everybody else do it, just like my father. And I've had a hell of a time convincing him, but He stopped cutting trees now.
Yeah, and,
But
you know, but to go, and then we go back into our PC and it's, our planning commission and. You know, I've tried to push through the being able to report and we can't do that. It's been turned down every time by a big majority, like the other one that votes it. And it's. I don't know, so I just go by and I wave, hey, how you doing? But beach is looking great. You got a little cold in there now. Wonderful. So I don't know.
I had a person that lived down the road from my father that I kind of looked at as, somebody that mentored me a little bit in my aviation career. I don't know if you remember George Milo or not, when he was
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah. Log
And
house.
when I came home, he told me, he said, Joe, you can't get involved in town politics. Because your viewpoint is not the same anymore. You've been around the world, you've seen all sorts of different things. And it won't be accepted and you'll be pushed out just like I was. That's why I'm here, because I'm not gonna be pushed out. And I'm not gonna be pushed out by the agenda that has been here forever. And I know it's frustrating.
Yeah.
You know, I got people that I went to school with and I grew up with that are now make me feel like I'm on the opposite side because of where I've been and what I've done and what I've learned. And I know there's better ways. So, you know, that's the frustrating part is do you stand and fight the fight year after year after year, which is hard, or do you not? And we disband and we go away and let them have their way. Me personally, I'd rather fight.
But this committee is not standing up and fighting, in my opinion, and it's not, you know, you don't turn around and run, it's just like. You know, when we do the education piece, we do some of the projects, but.
But just like that person that you were talking about, he had at least 3 phone calls with the state. One of them was my wife. You know, so that, you know, we have to reach the majority of the population one way or the other. Because the more people you reach and the more people that understand and are educated, are the more people that are gonna do the reporting. Right?
I think the majority of people do the right thing. So it's those people that, you know, in my opinion, I don't think we're gonna reach the people that are gonna just do what they wanna do.
You may
No,
not, but if you meet,
never will.
if
No,
you reach all
I've
the
done
other
it this
people.
way and I don't want it this way. I
Yeah.
don't need a committee to tell me I'm gonna do it different, because this is
Yeah.
my land or my things,
Right.
my lake shore, and I'm gonna do what I want on it,
Yeah.
basically.
And unfortunately, every town in Vermont right now that doesn't have a subcommittee or anybody else to police it up is going through the same exact thing.
Sure.
But we have.
But we're
there's gotta
not,
be a
we're
starting
not
point.
policing,
No,
no, so.
we are indirectly because we're educating. And the more
Yeah, that's a
education,
stretch.
it's like I said, the more education, the more reporting you're gonna have.
We're educating people about how to get the policing done through the state.
Right.
But we're not doing it ourselves.
And we put up a website with more interaction with the state.
Yeah.
That gives them a more direct avenue, so they're not calling 150 different people before they get to the right person. It's not a battle that's won in one day,
No,
because we're not gonna get that. If
no, nothing is.
You know, we're gonna have to go the long route to get to where we wanna be.
And where is that?
Well,
Where do
if
we
you want
want it?
enforcement, right now, the only enforcement we're gonna have until you change the entire culture around here is educating other people so they can do the enforcement.
And go to the state.
Go to the state.
Or go to the state.
So Andy, what about updating the zoning administrator website with some of the state resources?
What was the question, David?
What about updating the zoning administrator website with some of the state resources?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea, but that's one of the things we're doing and that's being proposed for the update to the development regulations. There's a lot of links to the various, state offices that require permits.
So at least you'll have the 3 links that we identified.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had my choice, everybody's seen that reference list I put at the back of the document.
Right.
And one takes you to a pamphlet, which is kind of one of our directives from the select board. Another one is best management practices. I mean, David, you can look at it. My feeling is the PC site would get clunky.
This is the ZA site.
Or the ZA site.
Mhm.
I think it'd get clunky.
Yeah.
But I think at least the 3 links. And well, actually, Andy, at the end of the day, there are probably gonna be 6, because the bylaws do recognize the best management practices. It does recognize, I think it did recognize the pamphlet. I'm not saying it's great, David. I'm just saying we're gonna get like 6 links to the state at the zoning website. But it doesn't scream shoreland protection. And it will be, I think it'll be a benefit,
Yes, I agree.
but it does not scream shoreline protection.
So Andy, is there a next step on that?
Well, we're going through our whole update process on the development regulations. And.
Right, you're
you know,
talking about the bylaws. I was talking about the ZA website.
We don't have any firm plans right now to make any updates. Not saying it's a bad idea. We could look at it for sure.
Yeah,
Andy,
I'll talk to you offline about that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
But if the bylaws are passed with all the updates.
Right.
It seems like it would make sense to put those links on the ZA.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would make.
And who
great sense.
authorizes that?
Like I think the ZA.
Okay, so
Yeah, and we could. work with
Danielle
yeah.
would be like, I want these on the website, they're
Yeah.
important, and she can put them on.
Yeah,
Okay,
And I don't believe there's a reason why she can't put a link on there for reporting.
and then the only open item is a link to another site that we might manage
Right.
that,
Mhm.
you know, has more verbiage on shoreline protection, so on and so forth. Right. All right, so David, you're gonna talk to Andy offline.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we can, let's move into projects, but I think we can continue the discussion on, you know, I think we're asking, what do we wanna be next year?
yeah.
What do we wanna be next year? So I mean, let me give you the financial statement. The quick financial statement on projects. Roughly. You know, you can if the town managed a project. It could capture, I'm gonna say roughly 10%. Of the project value, in addition to paying direct costs for staff time. That's kind of how these watershed groups do it and so on and so forth. So potentially it can bring revenue into the town in addition to, you know, now the town's not gonna have to buy $100,000 of riprap and have town personnel dump it in there and so on and so forth. I also. Comments I've gotten are, yeah, we can do that, but wouldn't it be nice if we did something better, which is bioengineered shoreland? And I will say this, I mean, I kind of shifted to this shoreline restoration. DEC would not look favorable upon a seawall. It potentially could get permitted by DEC, but we wouldn't get a dime. So it needs to be a bioengineered, I think riprap has some places. But protecting the trees, I think, is a priority for DEC. I think, adding vegetation where necessary. And yes, there are some areas you're gonna have to just dump rocks because there's nothing else that will work. But so, I mean, with that said, we have $10,000, which I think is pretty cool. This is the task order. How can David see these? We'll talk through them, David.
Fine. Yeah, talk to him. I'm good.
It's a task order to the town of North Hero.
Can you send them that
Yeah,
as an attachment?
I did this once before. There it is. Alright, so we got a task order. Basically, milestones, a list of proposed projects. I've got a cursory list. I mean, I think. Let me state this, if there's any substantial role this subcommittee could play is identifying projects, period. If we weren't here, Tracy wouldn't have come to me and said, hey, Tom, can you help me? Right?
Right.
And we potentially, you know, we have a project here, we have another one on Lakeview, so on and so forth. I think the town sees everything going on. And I think the town sees problems, whether it's residents, the ZA, the town operations and all that kind of stuff. And if we identify projects, we have paths to get money. I'm undecided at this minute. We'll go through this. I'm undecided at beyond that, how much farther do we go in terms of the management of the project? Because I'll show you, it gets pretty extensive. But identifying projects, no one else is doing it. And because no one else is doing it, and I don't want to say this wrong, but right now we've got the clean water service provider has about at least $1 million of unallocated funds. And they're 2 years behind spending. So in fact, I mean, I'm pretty happy. We just completed allocating our first $500,000, but that was 2022 funding. And so they have 2023 funding, 2024, and they're about to get another $500,000. The money is there if you can figure out how to organize it and get it.
That was my biggest task of coming to anybody, because, you know, just starting in the position of what agency controls what, or who gets in,
And it's not easy, trust me.
who does what, basically, you know?
So this is basically what the town agreed to, a list of proposed projects. I kind of I verbally said, you know, we have this, we have a trail at P-lots, we have 5 properties with cliff erosion that could be addressed. There's the culvert, which I heard had been replaced, but it still needs cleaning to get the water flowing and all that kind of stuff. Long-term, big time is there anything without impacting residents and marinas and so on and so forth that can be done with the causeway? Because that's, right now, everything gathers in P-lots and Cary, and it just sits there.
Right, no circulation.
There's no circulation and it sits there. So I mean, I've got a list. I think we can expand on the list. Identify site design considerations and permitting needs. I think within this group, I think we could handle the permitting needs. Site identification is, or identify site design considerations. That's what Tracy and I did. We called DEC in. And they want to come out. And they came out and wrote us a nice report and said, you know, shoreline erosion control. They gave us 3 things to consider in terms of what to do with the trees, what to do with the shale that's eroding, and what to do with the dirt that's eroding.
And Tom, I'm sorry, what's this location?
This is P-lots going to that portion that.
Oh,
that
okay,
washed
great.
out, that portion that washed out. This is a biggie. So once, let's keep going with this. Once we fix that, the town will need to agree to maintain it. So once, you know, once it's all what we want it to look like and the project is complete, the town will need to agree to an O&M operation and maintenance. Doesn't mean they're not gonna get paid for it by the state, but they'll need to put in an O&M plan. And so that's a long-term, projects are defined as a 15-year event.
Right.
So we'll have to, and that's like, okay, look at it every year, and if it needs restabilization, so on and so forth. I'm not scaring you.
No,
Okay.
no.
And then the project forms, and I'm gonna work on that. But, you know, that's kind of the scope of the task order. And again, it seemed like The select board was very supportive of it. I don't think they know the devil in the details, but the select board was very supportive of this. So that's kind of the big picture of what we have to do.
The
As
devil-
part of the O and M, who pays that?
My guess is they would hope that there's some cost sharing, but
With the town?
with the town,
Yeah.
but the state will provide funds to do O and M.
Yeah.
They want to just know who's going to do it and who should get the funding.
And a plan.
Right.
I mean, the way I look at it is, we're gonna have to maintain one way or the other anyways.
Yeah.
Because most of this revolves around roadways.
Right.
So. Whether we're maintaining it or we're doing it from the beginning, to me, it seems better to have it done from the beginning the right way. And then maintain something that's
Yeah.
perfect. Done right.
So that's that. I'll show you there's a bigger agreement. Just very briefly,
As far as all the details, I mean, any other town that wants this help is gonna have to do the same details. So,
Yeah.
you know, whether it's us or somebody else, somebody's gonna do it.
They gotta be doing something now, right? Who flips the,
there's not a lot.
if no other town has any type of committee that looks into this, everybody, all the towns are flipping their own bill out of basically the town rights away.
Probably a lot of the reason why there's excess money that's backlogged
Right.
and not being used.
Nobody's,
There's a project at St. Albans Beach. There's a project, we did a project with the UVM Horticultural Center. We did a Falls Road Trail in I think it's St. Albans. There was a trail that was basically washing out. And now it was basically flowing into I think a creek or a river that fed into the main area. And that was a big project. That was a big project.
And that's where it's gonna get challenging for a small town like us. It's a town like St. Albans has tons of town employees.
oh,
You know, so they can allocate one person and say, this is your project. Whereas for us, it's mainly volunteers, so it's just gonna take a little extra effort.
And private roads are a big target right now. It feels like there's a lot of momentum on what can you do with private roads and how can you help private roads and so on and so forth. We have this big master document. So the good news about this is, 2 years ago, Joe, I think you were here. Remember when we were approved to be a subcontractor to clean water service provider?
I think so.
You were here. So we're approved, contractor to the clean water service provider. With that, now we have a master agreement. So we signed the master agreement. That task order was the first $10,000. We can get more than 10. My intent is we're gonna use a portion of the 10, not all of it, for the Pilots Road project. Our next request is gonna be for about $40,000 to $50,000, which will be a final design. So we'll go through, an engineering firm will have to come in. We will have to have at least define all the elements necessary for permitting. So that when the implementation project is funded, we know we have to go get a wetlands permit. We don't on this one, shoreland permit, an archaeological, Army Corps of Engineer. And there's a crazy one floating out there. The state wants to preserve, David, cedars, old cedars. So if there are any old cedars over there, they want them protected. That's a whole nother permitting process.
What defines old?
I don't know. I was just told. that,
Greater than
you
the
know,
median age of North Hero.
So we have, the mechanism is now in place for the town of North Hero. And as far as I know, no other town has this right now. To get, the number one, spend $10,000 to evaluate these projects and then submit to get additional funding. So the next one in my head would be $40,000 to $50,000 to do the final design. And then the implementation in my head is about, I'll say on the low end, 70,000 and on the high end, 200,000. And so most of that goes to pay the engineering firm to manage it, the contractors. But there is again a percentage for administering the program.
Okay.
Um,
But the cost would be a lot more if we were to do it on our own.
absolutely.
Yeah, so.
So with that said, I did send this document to everybody maybe a week ago. It just takes us through the steps of what I've gone through there. I'm still filling it in it because I'm finding every time I think I've got it nailed, somebody's like, Tom, did you fill out this form from DEC? And I'm like, okay, I got that one done. And then it's like, okay, what about this form from DEC? It's enough to drive you crazy, but it's all needed. My other comment on this is whoever does this and can figure it out is the one who's gonna get the majority of the funding. If you don't figure it out, guess what? You're not gonna
You're
get
not
it.
gonna get it,
Right.
but somebody will eventually.
So I'll go through the P-Lots Road. We know the project location. We've done a site visit. We've identified the owners. We at least have an initial via Carl that the owner is interested in participating. And we have interest from the town, which are the two main owners on this. There was significant discussion going back and forth with DEC in terms of what was this an MRGP? You know, a stormwater related town project. They get funding. You kind of know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I can't. I know what the
It's not,
stands
it's
for.
shoreline. It was very distinctly said this is shoreline. It does not fall under that category. V-Trans has nothing to do with it. Who's the other one that gets involved? So we've cleaned this one up pretty nice. In contrast, the library is a mess. Cause the library seemed like a super simple project. We got V-Trans involved. We got ag involved because most of the runoff is coming from a farm. We've got the town involved. We got the library committee involved, and we potentially have private owners on each side. And it's a mess. We got wetlands
Across the road, yeah.
across the road. And it's like, it was such an easy project. And I will tell you, I'm struggling with it.
Put a flower bed there.
Yeah. But this one's actually pretty good. So we have the ownership identification. We know the right of ways. I basically need to formalize this. I know the permits. I at least know who to contact for the permits. We've got shoreland. We don't have wetland. It is going to require a DRB review because it impacts. It's under the 102, Andy. It's under the 102. It's hazard.
Oh, the hazard.
The hazard.
Okay, oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the hazard. I don't think we have to do stormwater. Obviously, the ZA is gonna need to get involved. Potentially US Army Corps of Engineers, because I think some of the work will be below 98.5. I'm confident it'll be below 98.5. This archaeological thing, which is not brand new in Vermont, but that one's it's not a big deal, but it's hard to get the people to do it. And then the cedars.
Did you guys hear about the archaeological find in New York?
No,
Found a mastodon skull.
yeah, I did hear about that.
That was pretty cool. I saw a picture of the teeth today. They look so intact. It's kind of scary. They're so freaking big.
We've gotten through the project classification, worked back and forth with DEC. It's clearly a shoreline restoration project. The good news is, I know this doesn't mean anything to anybody, there's a calculator for it. That's the biggest deal there is, because without a calculator, we can't get any funding.
Right.
You need to be able to determine what the phosphorus reduction is. Because that allows us to say we're $20,000 per kilogram of the project is 20,000 per kilogram, 6,000 per kilogram, or 50. The range that the Clean Water Service Provider will fund, preferably 6 to 15. It can go up to 50 under the right conditions. My numbers at the very, very low end are 5 kilograms of phosphorus. At the very, very high end are 20. I couldn't imagine 20 kilograms at 50, I couldn't imagine it being $1 million project, but
Never know.
those cedars might flip it, you never know. So it's, I can't emphasize enough, there's a calculator that supports this project. So again, all of this has been identified, it needs to be formalized in a report. I've looked at the wetlands inventory, the V-Trans right away, I've got links for the VCGI review, I've done all this. There is a project ID, so that kind of the end result of that event is a project ID. So there's a project ID that says, okay.
We're gonna move forward with something, right?
So with that, our next event is track A or track B. Technically, this $10,000 is the track B, and now we want to work our way towards the track A. So here's where I believe we're gonna spend a portion, I'm gonna emphasize a portion of our $10,000. Formalize. So right now, we know where the property is, but we need to formalize it, right? We need to put in a report. Here's the location, here's a map, here's some pictures and so on and so forth. What's the project description? And that, we actually have most of that from Allison, from DEC, but that'll pretty much just be a nice description of the project, shoreline restoration, who are the players, what's the phosphorus reduction, and then, you know, what we're gonna call co-benefits. It's gonna keep us from having to do major engineered road project, which could potentially impact the lake. It's gonna be high visibility. People can take their boats by it and go, look at that.
Right.
So on and so forth. So, you know, there are gonna be a whole bunch of co-benefits to be put through. We will need something from the owners at this point. So we'll need the owner to put in writing that says, if you get a project to stabilize that shoreline, I would like that.
Yeah.
And we'll need the select board to write a letter that says the town supports the project. Most of the project will be in the town right of way. I'm confident we'll have to encroach on the private property. I need finalized, here's the map that shows, you know, here's the right of way, which is the town, and then the private property ownership. And now this could be a good role for the subcommittee, is we need to go out with an RF request for quote to an engineering consulting firm. I've already done kind of one, but it could be a good role for this committee to put that together, send it out, and then select the contractor. We're gonna have to, at this point, we have no power, so we would have to recommend the contractor to the select board for approval. It should be on the order of $1,500 to $2,000. So we're not gonna spend our whole $10,000 on this project. We're gonna spend roughly $1,000 to $2,000 to hire a consulting engineer. Tracy, I'll tell you this, if you can get me the road before and the road now, we may not need that. We may not need to spend the money on that. If we can clearly show how the road is eroded, or that cliff is eroded over the last 20 years. So the road's been moved. So when it was moved, there should have been, here's the location of the lake, here's the location of the cliff, here's all this. All that kind of stuff, and then we can say, here's where it is now. That'll be a piece of gold.
Great.
And Tracy already knows. I'm gonna start bugging him on that.
Tom, I think it's highly unlikely that you're gonna find that.
If there was a road project, I would imagine there's some drawings.
There might be.
Yeah, from what I understand, the road that got moved was from the barn north. Guess that'd be north.
And you know what? That's okay.
It wasn't in that area.
I understand, but it'll at least give us an indication of the erosion of that
Up farther down the road.
farther down the road, but
It's still
similar.
gonna impact. Similar impact to this.
Tracy,
area too.
what are
Yes.
you referring to?
I was speaking with Mike Scandori, and he was saying how back when his father was a road foreman. Early mid-70s, early 80s perhaps, that
Yeah,
they moved Pilots Point Road
that's right.
away from the lake.
Away from the lake. That's right. It used to be running
Yes.
on the lakefront, down in front of Chip's property. Do you know where the turnoff is for Chip Porter? You know where the turnoff is going to Cedarville?
Yes,
The first turnoff.
yes,
Yeah, so that used to be the Pilots Point Road.
right.
And it used to come up from the lake, and that road separated Chip Porter's property from the lake.
Mm.
But I think that's different from the update that I was talking about. So that happened back in the 70s, and then the Pilots Point Road came in where it is today, and what that old Pilots Point Road became like an easement that accessed the Cedarville lane, right? But the change that I'm talking about was, it's hard to kind of put my finger on it. I've been here about 20 years, and it was probably about 15 or 13 years ago, there was erosion. You know when you're on Pilots Point Road and you're going north of the barn,
Yeah.
and you're along the waterfront, there's a section there, I don't know, probably about 100 feet that has a what's the word, like a metal roadside,
Where the guardrails are?
or the guardrail.
Yeah,
So where the guardrail was put in, that road used to be about 10 feet further out to the lake.
towards the lake, yeah.
And there was erosion there, and they had to rebuild that road about 10 feet back.
Correct,
And that's
yes,
where the erosion is today that Tom is talking about.
right,
I think that's what we were all talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's beyond the barn,
So
where the guardrails are.
if
That's-
we-
Yeah, but when they
Yes.
built those guardrails, I strongly suspect they didn't map the lakefront. I'd be really surprised if they did that.
Right,
But if we can say this, I'm gonna say if it looks similar to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's eroded 10 feet over 13 years. We can make a case, and I think we need an engineering to basically say, okay, here's a similar area.
Yeah.
Similar erosion profile, so on and so
Yeah.
forth. It's eroded, this is eroded 10 feet in 13 years. This will have a similar erosion rate.
And be careful on quoting that 13 years, Tom. That's not a real number.
Right, no, right,
Yeah.
so we need
well,
to,
obviously, the road did get moved.
Yeah,
And obviously it was moved for erosion purposes, I would
Right.
assume.
right.
So
But
it
that's
might-
separate from when they relocated the road in front of Chip Porter's house.
Yeah,
just
that's a
destroyed
lot
it,
harder
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Correct,
so you and I'll have to just go out and you need to just show me all these areas.
yes,
So we had
Yeah.
the Chip Port area, then we have the area you're talking about. I just wanna see how similar they potentially are to what we're
Right.
talking about,
Yeah.
so we can potentially apply.
Yeah.
So let's keep going. Permitting requirements, now we're to the point where at least we need something from Misha that says, here are the elements you will need to permit. We don't have to file the permit yet, but here's everything you're gonna have to consider in the permit. We'll need the same thing from Army Corps, the ZA, and we may, I don't know what we would do. The ZA kind of formulates what you would take to the DRB. Right, Andy?
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that necessarily would even have to go through the ZA or the DRB.
I still think it falls within the special flood hazard area. It's below 102.
Have to look at that, maybe.
Cause David,
You
there's
know,
a.
after the last
there's a shoreline restoration right now at the DRB.
Yeah, and the question came up. It's actually one of my neighbors. It's only two lots away. And Andy, it was actually a really interesting conversation. It came up about whether or not that needed to be in front of the DRB, and it is in the Shoreland floodplain overlay, which surprised us, right? Because it's on a good 15-foot bluff, right, above the lake. And Patty LeBounty went back and looked at the overlay, And like 90% of the town is in the overlay.
Mhm.
Is that right, Andy?
That's altogether possible, but again, that overlay dates back to what, 1982 or something, and, there's updates being done.
Yeah. So the way that it currently would sit, pretty much anything on the lakefront would have to go to the DRB
Yeah.
because of the overlay.
Yeah, you and I have been saying this for like 2 years now. Yeah, no, David, you're spot on. I don't know if it's easy to. Yeah, no, you're right. If it's below the 102 contour, it has to go to the DRB. There's a few things the ZA can approve. But I mean, maybe you and I and Danielle can talk about it.
Yeah, we should probably talk.
Cause
about
you're kind of wincing a lot over there.
Well, our last update of the regulations, if you look at the shoreland stabilization section.
Yeah.
We basically said, you go to the state and get their permits. And we never really looked at the hazard area to see if that needed to be updated as well.
Well, you and I did look at it.
Yeah.
And my feeling is, David, if the special flood hazard area goes a long way to protecting shoreline.
Yeah.
You could almost take that and we already have our shoreline regulations.
Yeah.
They just, but for some reason, there's some vagueness in terms of following. Cause David, if there wasn't, the DREB would be doing shoreland all day long via the special flood hazard area.
Every day.
And I think, Brandy has some role in this. So that's something that's important, I think, for this project to discuss.
I don't think
We're-
it's anything that's really ever been thought about.
I don't either.
Not this deeply. I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the hazard regulations are in there because the FEMA requires us to have them in there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we looked at it.
But if you follow them,
Yeah.
they protect the shoreline pretty well.
Yeah.
Even this 100 foot, it helps a lot. So we need to get statements from everybody. We actually already have a conceptual design. If we can figure out the erosion rate, we've got the P reduction calculator done. Pictures, I still haven't gone out there, the weather, I can't find a time on the weather. I wanna take pictures along the front.
Right.
A site review, natural resource constraints, and then put a preliminary budget. We can. Right now, I'm trying to do as much of this as possible. I do have a potential engineering firm, but they can't come out till the spring. But we may just, maybe, I don't know how we'll do this yet. I might call a special meeting and say, hey, we need to review this RFQ, get it out to consulting engineers and select one to take to the select board. I want to get this project moving. But that's all the effort. So roughly, this first part was 8 hours of effort. The second part, I'm estimating around 32. So to get us through these phases is about 40 hours of work. And I kind of did a back of the envelope and said, if we hire an engineer to do that, that's 18 hours, $100 an hour. It's gonna be, it felt about right. We pay an engineer about $1,800 to do all that stuff. But then once we have all of that, we have project management, engineering review, a budget for 30% to final design implementation cost estimate. Now we go and we submit and try to get $40,000 to $50,000. So that's the event. I'm just gonna say this, based on the discussion we just had, this committee just served a really good role on this.
Right.
And we might have to make you like there's a word for it, a staff participant on our committee.
Tracy keeps getting on more and more.
He didn't seem very excited about that. But,
Well, no, I want to be involved as far as knowing what's going on, and it's like, I don't.
Well, the
You know,
thing
I-
is, it saves from your budget too, so at least the road ones just make sense, it should be involved.
and I need to get clarification on when and how we can pay you with this $10,000. Potentially town staff can get paid. It could be an interesting role for Danielle too. Cause she could potentially get paid through this also.
Well,
Via
you
the
say
contract.
she gets, in other words, the town would get reimbursed
Yeah,
for some for time, right? Yeah.
and she has project experience.
Yeah.
We need to talk,
Sure.
yeah. And we'll talk, we'll have a special flood hazard discussion, and we'll just talk about her willingness or interest in project management.
And one that kind of goes back to NRPC, because, you know, she has other duties with them.
Yep.
You know, how much extra time would you have available?
So anyway,
Andy, are we increasing our time with Danielle for the next year?
Knowing the budget constraints, I was able to move some money around within the overall ZA budget, so the total budget is a little higher than last year, but the budget for the ZA, it's a couple $1,000s higher,
Yeah.
So yes, I did put a little bit more in there. for the ZA.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
so we have 4 minutes to kind of go back to where David was. I'll just give you my feeling. Whether the committee exists or not, I'm gonna keep driving this thing.
Yep.
In part because I'm the chair of the Basin Water Quality Council that approves these funds, and I just feel the need to understand all what's required on a project, so I'm gonna drive it no matter what. I can't give you 100% good reason why. I think the subcommittee has a credibility value when we're doing this. I mean, that's my case. I understand. I'm super frustrated, but I've accepted the fact that I think the state can just do it all.
And the other part is once we figure out the methodology for all of this, you don't have to be the only person that's engaging every day.
Yeah.
You know, that's why, that would where I see more value of committee, because we could still be working on our education agenda, we could be working on projects. But have, you know, right now, until somebody gets through this, it's really hard to share. You know, that's the hard part, but once we get up and rolling as the projects are coming in and you're learning how to navigate them. Start passing that on to the other people around here and we can navigate too, and then it's not all you doing it all the time.
Well, potentially, Joe, that's our biggest argument for a permanent committee is. Cause we could have 3 or 4 people doing education and website. We could have 3 or 4 people doing projects. And they won't let us go beyond the 5-person event. And. So anyway,
But even if we got 5 people that were all equally trained, it'd make life so much easier on you. Not to mention, once we, you know, like me, I don't even really know what I'm looking for other than, okay, that bank's falling into the water, you know, or.
But we
issues
need
like
that.
But once we would all get more on the same page with it, as you're learning, then we could all go out and find projects. I think traveling by boat in the summertime would probably be the best way to identify a lot of them, so.
I mean, you and I already know of at least 4 areas. Of, I don't know what to call them, non-whatever. But if we went to them and said, hey, did you know we could get you 20 or 30 or 50 or whatever, 10 to help with that, to do it right, that would benefit the lake.
I think a lot of people would be interested in that.
Yeah.
They just don't want somebody coming out to their property saying, oh, you're in violation of this, and this. You know, if there was some type of, again, education.
I mean, nobody wants to get kicked down, right?
No, of course not.
Hey, you're not in compliance.
Right.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
You know, hey,
That's the
I
guy
noticed
with
that
the
you
back
have this
he
issue.
wants.
I have a way to help you with that issue.
Mhm.
They want to hear that.
Yeah.
And if we can get funding for their own personal property, obviously, they're gonna go for that. That's the biggest thing, right? Nobody wants to spend their own money to fix something, but if they can get some help and aid, do such.
I mean, you can't deny that the agenda of the team has definitely morphed into a different direction.
I think it's focused.
But I think we're finding more of what we can actually tangibly do and how it can benefit, our town. Where
So-
it started is not where we're at now, but.
So at 7 o'clock, my suggestion is this, we, at our January meeting, we redefine the committee.
Yep. New mission statement.
Maybe a new mission
Yeah.
statement, new goals and objectives for the year, take that to the select board, kind of give them a review of what happened this year.
Yeah.
Tell them here's the direction we're gonna go this, moving forward. And then. I mean, I think we should make an argument for. To solicit more people, like if Danielle, and I'm confident she does, because I saw it in her resume as project management experience, that could go huge here.
Yeah.
And Andy, I don't know if does she have a PE?
No.
Okay. And so on and so forth. So I mean, I think we should evaluate that.
And just so you know, I mean, her project management experience is solar installations.
No, I understand that,
But,
but.
no,
you
but
go through
just
all the
know, yeah,
hoops.
there's certain things you have to be, capable of to handle project management, regardless of the type of project.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no.
I gotta hop, guys.
All right, thank you.
All right, David.
So it
Thank
doesn't
you.
feel like we need a motion for what? Anything,
Adjourn.
other than adjourn, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Cut off the, recording.
See ya.